I am delighted to welcome you all today to our Stellenbosch University's Library Information Services third Open Access webinar in our Be Open #BeOpenAccess Smart series. The topic of today is Beyond Transformative Agreements, Reflections from an Open Access Working Group. We do have, as I've indicated, attendees from around 23 countries, and about half of them are actually from the African continent, which I'm very pleased to note, but everybody is very welcome. I'd also like to give a special welcome to our guest speaker, Professor Astrid, who will be our main speaker, Astrid Söderbergh Widding from Sweden. I'll say a little bit more about her just now. And I also would like to welcome a special welcome to Professor Sibusiso Moyo. She is our Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research, Innovation and Postgraduate Studies here at Stellenbosch University. So after that, she will make some introductory remarks. I will introduce then each of the two speakers now, and then thereafter, after the presentation by Professor Astrid Söderbergh Widding, we will have a short period, about 10 or 15 minutes, where we will have a Q&A. So if you have any questions or comments to make, please put it in the chat. And then we will have a vote of thanks from my colleague here, Mimi Seifert-Wirth. So firstly, let me introduce Professor Sibusiso Moyo. As I've indicated, she is the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research, Innovation and Postgraduate Studies here at Stellenbosch University. She holds a PhD in Mathematics from the University of Natal, Durban. In Durban, of course, it was then the University of Natal, KwaZulu-Natal now, and a Master's in Tertiary Education Management with distinction from the University of Melbourne, Australia, as well as in Partnerships, Engagement and the Knowledge Information Management Cluster. She has published extensively in international journals and presented at both international and national conferences in her field, and is involved in the supervision of master's and doctoral students and mentors a number of postgraduate students and emerging researchers. Her current research projects involves applications using group theoretic techniques in problems arising from nonlinear phenomena with applications in mathematical and physical sciences. She joined Stellenbosch University from the 1st of September 2022. I'll also, before Professor Moyo speaks, also introduce Professor Astrid Söderbergh Widding. She is the immediate past president, past rector of Stockholm University, 2013 to 2025 in Sweden. She is also the chair of, and I'd actually just like to come, sorry, just mix up something here. As I've indicated, she is the immediate past rector of Stockholm University. Professor Widding is a Swedish cinema studies scholar. She is a board member of the Swedish Film Institute and also a former president of the board of the Ingmar Bergman Foundation, and a columnist in the newspaper Svenska Dagbladet. She earned her PhD in 1992 at Stockholm University with a dissertation on Andrei Tarkovsky. And then she was also elected as a member of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences in 2014 and became a Knight of the French Legion of Honor in 2015. In 2023, she was appointed chair of the board of directors of the Nobel Foundation. And those of you who do know about the Nobel Prize, of course, she manages, this foundation is the one that manages the finances and administration of the Nobel Prize. She was also chair of the Swedish Association of Higher Education Institutions, founder of the Open Access Journal of Aesthetics and Culture, She has studied, also published extensively, mainly in English and Swedish, books, peer-reviewed articles, and popular science articles. I understand she was also recently appointed as a member of the Stellenbosch Institute of Advanced Sciences here at Stellenbosch University. But most importantly, the reason why she is here with us today, she was just here for a few months, also as a fellow at STIAS. She is chair of the Beyond Transformative Agreements Working Group in Sweden, and was also chair of the Bibsam Consortium from 2016 to 2015. So she will share insights from the work of the Beyond Transformative Agreements Group, a task group within the Swedish Bibsam Consortium, which sought to guide Sweden away from unsustainable TA models or transformational agreements models. She will highlight the group's key findings, the challenges faced, and the opportunities that lie ahead on the journey towards open science. So this hashtag, the Open Access Smart webinar series, was initiated here at Stellenbosch University as a critical tool for advancing scholarly communication, providing ongoing education and support for researchers and librarians engaging with open science. The library continues to be dedicated to promoting open science by implementing innovative services that support researchers, academics, and all stakeholders in the scholarly publishing process, processes that are available to them. Over to you, Professor Moyo.
Thank you so much for that, for those remarks and for the generous introduction. So I really thank you. And again, a special welcome to everybody who is in this session. And I want to observe all protocols, but just to say a few remarks. So from my side, it's really on behalf of this University of Stellenbosch, it's really a privilege to welcome you to today's seminar in the hashtag Be Open Access Smart series, which are hosted by our Library and Information Service and under the leadership, of course, of Miss Ellen Tice, who's our, the Senior Director of the Library, and her team as well. I also want to, of course, acknowledge our speaker, for joining us. I think I know Professor, Widding was also part of the people who were residents here at the STIAS Institute, which, we really are privileged to have that support as well from the, the foundation that supports the Nobel in Africa series. And so we really thank her for her time and also for sharing today. So I think this conversation we are having is important given the context of where Africa is today and, of course, the world at large. We know that if we look at where the world is currently, there's a lot of geopolitical issues going on, there's access issues going on, and we know that libraries can play a significant role in providing access and also, ensuring that even those that normally would not be able to have access to this information, especially in countries where there's conflict and in countries where there's inequality and lack of resources, that, the libraries play a big role in whichever region that we find ourselves in. And it was really great, I think, in 2025, end of 2024, I spent some time in Uppsala in Sweden. So it was really good also to see what the libraries are doing there in terms of open access initiatives. So today's session, of course, Beyond Transformative Agreements, invites us to engage critically with the current models of scholarly publishing, particularly the transformative or read and publish agreements that have gained traction, of course, globally and in Africa and South Africa at large as well. So while these agreements have opened doors for many researchers to publish open access without direct costs, we must also recognize their limitations. So for institutions across the global south, these models are often financially unsustainable and risk reinforcing long-standing imbalances in access to knowledge. So we know that, yes, there's a lot of effort that has been made by our libraries at national level and also across the continent to try and negotiate in terms of these transformative agreements. But On the research side, researchers still find this expensive, and institutions, I think it's quite difficult to manage budgets and so forth, but we know that the discussions go on, and it's great for us. We are really honored, of course, to welcome Professor Astrid Söderbergh Widding to this session, whose leadership in shaping international scholarly communication, of course, is widely respected. Her reflections on the work of Sweden's Beyond Transformative Agreements Working Group, which is convened under the Bibsam Consortium, offer valuable insights into how national systems can explore more inclusive long-term solutions. So Professor Widding, I want to thank you once again for joining us and for sharing the lessons and possibilities which emerge from the work that you're doing. We hope that from what you share, we can also, learn from that and see how best we can position ourselves, both as a university, but also as part of the national system, and also, the influence that we can have on other African networks as well around access and the roles that the library can play in those countries, respective countries. So at Stellenbosch University, we are committed to advancing open science as a cornerstone of research excellence as well, societal relevance, and global collaboration. We believe that research should be accessible, visible, and impactful, and that open access publishing plays a critical role in achieving this. So our current read and publish agreements have enabled many of our researchers to publish open access without incurring article processing charges. We know that, of course, the journals covered, it's not in all the fields, because some journals still remain quite expensive in terms of the fees that they charge us. And we want, of course, to use this opportunity as well to encourage our academic community to continue making use of the platforms where we have these, agreements, and which can be used and accessed by many students and researchers as well. So at the same time, we are also under no illusion that, such agreements, of course, that they are sufficient. We can say, yes, they are there, but they are not sufficient to adequately address the need and the inequality within the global platform as well. So they can be viewed, of course, as interim measures at this stage. So our library continues to play a pivotal role in this transition, not only through negotiations and supporting services, but also through advocacy, training, and thought leadership. Our library director, of course, is involved in a number of networks where she's able to contribute to a number of, discussions in terms of changes and agreements that need to be done. But also our library plays a big role in training also postgraduate students, skills training for early career researchers. And so we see the library, not just at Stellenbosch and other universities, playing critical roles in terms of the support that can be given to our scholars and researchers and students as well. So as we reflect on this question today, I encourage us to reimagine what an equitable future looks like for scholarly communication and access as well. What does that look like? How do we ensure that the voices and knowledge systems of the Global South are not only included, but empowered in this future? So thank you once again for your contribution, and thank you to all the participants, and also to our library for really arranging this seminar. So thank you, and I look forward to the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Moyo. I will immediately hand over to Professor Astrid Söderbergh Widding.
Thank you so much for inviting me, for having me with you today. I'm deeply honored, and I'm also very grateful for you sharing my pictures, as I'm quite unexperienced in Teams. So what I will offer you today is a limited Swedish example. I'm very well aware that it is limited, but I speak from the position where I am, and I think that it might be interesting, nevertheless, to share these reflections with you on my own, the journey that I've been doing myself in open access. So on the first real slide, on the next slide, we can see a little bit about the background, as I would like to frame it for you. So the next slide shows some facts about the Bibsam Consortium. The consortium consists of 95 Swedish institutions, both large academic institutions, but also smaller government agencies. And we have around 30 transformative agreements, but also some agreements for publishing only. And the institutions, it's an opt-in, opt-out consortium, so the institutions can join the agreements of that choice, and then also they can opt out at any time. We have a 52 million euro turnover per year, and this is 68% of the combined expenditures for open access publishing and subscriptions among our members. So if we could go to the next slide, 2 slides now please. Yes, this was the facts about the consortium. And I would also add that it is administered by the National Library of Sweden, but it is governed by the universities. And then if we proceed to even the next slide, we get an overview of the Swedish open access landscape on the next slide, and we see all the key stakeholders. And this is then the Swedish open access landscape that you get an overview of. And here, of course, in the middle, there are the government offices of Sweden, because they have offered strong support after having been convinced by the universities to a large extent, and the Ministry of Education and Research. And they have given 2 missions, one to the Swedish Research Council, which is responsible for open access to research data, and the other to the National Library of Sweden, who has the responsibility for open access, which is, of course, our focus today. But they have also, they are supposed to collaborate in this, so they do so through joint action committees. And there are not only people from these 2 institutions, but also from other research funders, researchers also, of course, but also higher education institutions, which are governed by SUHF, which is the Association of Swedish Higher Education Institutions, the Rectors Conference, if you will. And then, of course, there is also emanating from the government, they are part of the coordination in the European Union. And there is also then the Bibsam Consortium, which I already mentioned, which is administered by the National Library, but consists of universities and other governmental agencies and research institutes. So in this way, I hope you get a little bit the overall picture. And then we could move to the next slide, please. And also, as I said, the government is very engaged. So they have decided that Sweden should convert to an open science system by 2026. And this was decided by a research bill, which was approved in 2020. And then after that, they have also given the task to the National Library to publish national guidelines for open science, which were published last year, 2024. But before that, the Swedish Association of Higher Education Institutions had already published a roadmap for open science and also a guide for implementation of this roadmap. And that was on initiative from the universities, who wanted some guidance. How do we want this? We wanted to implement it, but we don't know how to proceed. So this was purely it was a bottom-up initiative from the universities. And all these guidelines and roadmaps, they are quite aligned with one another, but there are also guiding principles and recommendations. And in the next slide, we see the Council conclusions from the European Union, which were decided in 2023, and this was under the Swedish presidency. And it was Council conclusions concerning a high quality, transparent, open, trustworthy and equitable scholarly publishing system. And in preparing these Council conclusions, the group Beyond Transformative Agreements were also asked for advice by the government. So it was really aligned with what the Bibsam Consortium wants and what the universities work for. So there is a call for immediate and unrestricted open access in all research involving public funds. It also says that there are unsustainable costs for the paywalls today. and they thus call on the member states to support different policies toward a scholarly publishing model that is not for profit, that is multi-format and with no cost for authors or readers. And then they also encourage member states to support the pilot program Open Research Europe, which is an open research platform, and I will come back to that. So now on the next slide, we also have the national guidelines that I mentioned. On behalf of the Swedish government, the National Library of Sweden developed these guidelines. And they are divided into 6 areas: scholarly publications, research data, open research methods, open educational resources, public engagement in science, and also infrastructure supporting open science. And this they are supposed to provide support and guidance to all actors in Sweden. And of course, the reason why the scope is so broad is that they are aligned with the UNESCO recommendation on open science. And it is this, I think this is a great advantage, but it also means that we are in some areas we are really paving the way. In other areas we are rather perhaps, if not lagging behind, so at least we are not that advanced. But I think that is just the way it is, and I still think that it's good to have this broad scope, that open science is really a very broad field, not only open access to publications. And if we go to the next slide, I will finally talk a little bit about the working group. And this group, it had a limited time of existence. It was appointed in March 2021, and it was supposed to work for 2 years, and it took a little longer before the final report was ready. The members in the group were representatives from senior university management, but also there were researchers, both some very advanced in working for open access and some a little more reluctant. There were different research funders and also negotiators from the Bibsam Consortium. So the aim was to work out a strategy for the Bibsam Consortium for when negotiating new agreements after 2024. And the strategy has since then been mandated, and I come back to that, from the management of the universities. And the task was also to investigate alternative publishing routes and give some guidance in that direction. In the next slide, we see the result of a workshop that was held. There was a long learning phase for this group when we invited various stakeholders and tried to learn both about the global perspective, about the local European perspective, about the Swedish one, and looking at different routes that had been taken already by different agencies and actors in the field. So there were 4 scenarios which were the basis of the final report. And these scenarios should not be regarded as mutually exclusive, but rather as complementary. So first of all, the strategy to stop signing transformative deals or even cancel deals with commercial publishers. Second one was alternative publishing routes to further explore those possibilities. The third one is about open access without APCs, with the APCs being replaced by a lump sum for open access costs. And then finally, the fourth path, which is a bit difficult to explore because it has some legal complications, but it is the rights retention strategies while maintaining the copyright to publications, with keeping them with the author. And this has been successfully explored in, for example, in Norway, and I know also in some parts of the UK, but in Sweden we are not that advanced, but it is still one of the important paths that we could explore further. So if we go to the next slide, after the report was published, the Swedish Association of Higher Education Institutions adopted a number of recommendations that not only should scholarly publishing remain within the academic community, but the costs of publishing must decrease. And secondly, they advised the Bibsam Consortium that it should not primarily enter into agreements for reading and publishing in hybrid journals, but only negotiate agreements for publishing in open access journals. And this should be implemented from 2026, following then the Swedish government. And finally, that the aim should be to manage costs in a more sustainable way. And this must be in collaboration between higher education institutions, funders, and also the National Library of Sweden. And these recommendations in turn led to, and this is the next slide, an action plan for the Bibsam Consortium, which we adopted. I left the consortium when I left as university president in January, but we decided about this action plan before that. And here the aim is to facilitate the open publication of scholarly results, and it's basically the same points that come back, that the consortium should not sign agreements for reading and publishing in hybrid journals from 2026, and that the consortium should promote and support new pathways to open publishing in different ways, for example, through exploring alternative business models, and also by having research-driven journals that migrate to other platforms from traditional publishers. And finally, also that publication should occur under an open license and be fair, and also exploring the secondary publication rights. So when we move to the next slide, we see a quotation from Wilhelm Widmark, who is the vice chair of the Bibsam Consortium, and he has published also a number of articles on transformative agreements and how to go beyond them. And this quote, I think, is quite telling. It says that the aim with these agreements are to shape a path to transform the system, not a new business model, which is very lucrative for the publishers. So I think this is important to keep in mind. Otherwise, we turn the transformation into a state of, so to speak, permanent transition where there is no transformation. And this was never the intention, at least not from us working with open access. So it's very, very important to be able to move beyond. Next slide, please. And here we see a transformative agreement life cycle, which I think they talk about nowadays, where for the first 20 years of the Bibsam Consortium, we were down at the red with read-only subscriptions. And then we moved on to the transformative agreement phase with read and publish agreement. And now we are starting to move one step further with publishing as a service, and I'll come back to that. And of course, the goal is fully open access publishing. We are not there yet, but it is up or out. So please, the next slide. And this is the ESAC statistics, which they publish regularly. And Sweden is somewhere at this point, Sweden was in top. We have been also in position 2 or 3, or Finland and the Netherlands are also very close. But you can see there that the part in gold is, of course, fully open access. The gray part is hybrid or closed journals, and the rest are the transformative agreements. So they can see it's still the vast majority of agreements also in Sweden are transformative. And now what are we doing to go beyond? Next slide, please. Well, now I go back to this point of publishing as a service. And this was work that we started in 2023. And the conditions that we had in the consortium was that it should allow unlimited publishing in both hybrid and open journals within the contract. there should be unlimited reading rights also for closed articles within the contract, and that the cost of the contract should only be built on publishing and not on the number of APCs, and with, as I said before, one fixed lump sum both for publishing and reading. And I will now use our negotiations with Elsevier as an example. And please, the next slide. Here we started by a memorandum of understanding where we agreed on certain shared objectives. First of all, that we would be piloting an agreement beyond the transformative ones, to move beyond that. An agreement based on the services provided by the agreement, that is publishing, reading, and the platform, and in particular then publishing as a service. And there was also an agreement that parties should work together to be transparent about how prices are set for services, and also to, in the final agreement, to reflect the value exchanged in order to reach a sustainable pricing. Next slide, please. And here is the result of those negotiations. We have now an agreement for 4 years, spanning from 2024 to 2027. And here, during this period, the reading fee is to be phased out to 0 in 2027. And you can see what it contains. The Science Direct Complete Freedom Collection with unlimited publishing and also unlimited reading. And then there is also an add-on with a limit number of 100 OA articles in cell press plus unlimited reading. And this brought the total price of 2024 down with 11%, and it is supposed to remain on the same level for 4 years. And you can see the yearly fee approximately 14 million euro. So please, the next slide. Here you can see this is partly in Swedish, but you can see here the time frame from 2012 to 2027. So you can see first the long period where we had paid for reading, traditional subscriptions, and then there was a period without an agreement where we left the negotiation table because we couldn't reach an agreement. Then we had this period with a transformative agreement from 2020 to 2023, and then finally this new agreement that I've told you about. And you can see the upper line is how the costs would have developed if we would have just continued along the same line as during the reading period, the subscription period, and then the lower line marks where we are now. So as you can see, the total cost reduction has been 15.5 million euro. Next slide, please. So from 2026, the Bibsam Consortium will only negotiate for fully open access journals. And the first negotiation will be in 2027 to replace this agreement with Elsevier. So now we have 2 years to communicate the strategy within the scholarly community. And the researchers are, of course, still free to publish in any journal that they want, but the central financing will be reserved for the pure open access articles. And hopefully the researchers will actually change their publishing strategies and not publish anymore in hybrid journals. But as I said, they are still free to do so, but at their own cost. I will now proceed to give a short example of a cooperation with the funders in Sweden to achieve fully open access publishing. So please, the next slide. Here, this was an old report that the National Library made. It must have been 10 years ago or so. And here it was about how to achieve sustainable funding for transformation to open access. And the first recommendation of all was to establish a multi-stakeholder group for further consultation, and that we did. Because through the transformative agreements, the universities took over all the costs for both publishing and reading, and this, of course, is not sustainable, and especially not since all Swedish funders also have an OA mandate. So this was supposed to lead to a shared responsibility between research funders and universities. Next slide, please. Here we can see the different components in an openly available publishing system, with in the main circle publishing with publishers that only publish OA, open, but also surrounded by smaller bubbles with open infrastructures for publishing, and also in the particularly European example with the pilot with Open Research Europe, the platform. And then also there is Diamond Open Access as an alternative, which I will come back to. Next slide, please. And here we see the total costs for the period 2026 to 2029, estimated for, of course, for the future years, but for open access publishing, and 36 million kroner. Now I turn from euro to kroner, and that's about 1/10 of the sum for the period 2024 to 25, which will continue until 2029 by publishers that only publish open access journals. And then secondly, university publishers and international scholarly society publishers with a clear strategy. And these are, of course, then those which are part of the transformative agreements. We have, for several years, we have said that there must be a clear open access component, and there must be a path towards transformation in order to reach agreements. So next slide, please. So now about the future work. Diamond Open Access, I could speak much about that, but I will not do so. I will just say that we have started in Sweden a node for diamond publishing, but also a Nordic hub between the different Nordic countries, because everybody is wondering, how can we do this? How can we make it come true? And so this is the way to at least start working together, not trying full scale, but just starting with a node. And then also a strategy that we used also when we were without an agreement with Elsevier, that we made important savings. So from not paying hybrid journals in the future, these savings, the idea is that they could be invested in alternative publishing routes and also publishing infrastructures. And as an example, Swedish funders have, within this group that I mentioned, from 2026, they have decided that they will finance publishing at the platform Open Research Europe to support for researchers who want to use that platform instead. So next slide, please. So how can we then obtain a transformation? And this is my last slide, actually. Well, we can do so most of all, I think, through international discussions and cooperation. Therefore, I highly value this webinar today and similar fora. I think this is really key to success if we want the transformation to occur. We should also continue, of course, to investigate and to build different alternative publishing routes, and that can be different ways in different countries. So it's not one size fits all. There are many routes. Then also, of course, as I've already mentioned several times, the rights retention strategies, which is something that I think is very interesting to explore as well. We should continue to put pressure on the publishers to be transparent about their cost models. It has turned out to be extremely difficult in our case, for example, with Elsevier, but we were very happy when we succeeded in this Beyond Transformative Agreements pilot, that we actually have reached transparency about the cost models, because this is really a cornerstone if we are to move forward. And also always be ready to walk away from the negotiation table. We only did so once in the case of Elsevier before, but we would be ready to do so anytime that we don't reach of course, one must be able to compromise to a certain extent, but our core principles should not be violated. Because if we don't act, there will definitely be no transformation. We will be in this state of permanent transition, which will lead nowhere. And of course, the main goal is to take the ownership of the publishing system back to academia, where it belongs. It's our own fault in many ways that we are where we are today. It is by having left the publishing systems in the hands of commercial actors. And we should also be aware of that it is only the researchers' own behavior that can change the system. So this is really a change of culture, and changes of culture always take time and should take time. But I think this component of communicating with researchers is really key, is crucial. So I'm absolutely convinced to conclude that we can get beyond the transformative agreements, but only on the condition that we work together. So thank you.
Thank you so much. But yeah, I was saying that I'm so pleased, to have witnessed this thought-provoking reflection, Prof. Widding, from you on the realities of open access and moving beyond transformational agreements. We do call them transformational agreements in South Africa to reflect the fact that they are transitional in nature. This is what you also indicated, to say they are transitional. But you did say that, moving beyond transformational agreements won't mean that, there's a one-size-fits-all. We'll have to look at the realities that are realities so that, we work within our context and come up with our own models. And also, I did like, the fact that you spoke to ongoing collaboration, to say it's very important, that we collaborate, across borders, etc., etc. But in any case, I will open now the floor for questions. Are there any burning questions from the audience, colleagues? If you have any question, you can just unmute yourself and just speak, or you can just write down. I see there is, sorry, I'll just read the surname because I see the surname, Fanbash. Can you go ahead?
Hi, hello. Thank you for your presentation. If you had to recommend specific behaviors from researchers in practical terms to help in the transformation, what would you suggest?
I think one must start not by putting pressure on the researchers, but by providing opportunities for the researchers to easy the access to open publishing. And that, for example, what we have tried to do is to take these costs centrally. And at one point in our work in Sweden, we agreed that this is, of course, librarians are absolutely key to make the transformation happen. But it is also a matter of leadership and of university management. So we made this really, we did a thorough work to engage not only the researchers but also the rectors. And from the start, the rectors wouldn't join because they said, "Well, this is this is only each individual researcher should solve this in his or her own way." But if we don't provide possibilities, they could never make an informed choice. So that was the way we started to work on that. So I think that is perhaps the most important thing. And then also it's, of course, extremely important to discuss research assessment and how merits are evaluated, because that is, in Sweden we have had an experience with the Young Academy of Sweden. It's a wonderful academy of young scholars, but they have been a little bit, some parts of it have been a little bit reluctant towards open access, because of course they don't know what will happen if they don't publish in top-notch journals. Will they ever be recognized as researchers? So I think it's really the whole, it's really, as I said, it's really the whole culture that needs to change.
Thank you so much. I hope that your question has been answered. But Prof, you've also answered, the question that I had, in terms of the role of the institutions in supporting, open access, in supporting non-APC, based open access models. To say, what is the role of the institutions in terms of all of this? But now I do, get your point to say, perhaps, even just recognition of the people that publish open access, that is, very important. But we still have a bit of time, colleagues, maybe just for 5 minutes or so. Is there any other question?
I forgot, I could perhaps I have one more comment about, and that was about the ESEC statistics, that where Sweden was in top, and that is both regarded as a strength, but it is also regarded as sort of disadvantage, because some people consider that, well, we are too small a country, we shouldn't try to pave the way, we must wait for all the others. And now I really think that, no, I think it's important. We are very well aware that we are a small country, but we try to cooperate internationally and to exchange our experiences with others, and also to be informed by others. So I think that regardless of the size of the country, I think that it's important to have consortia and that dare to pave the way, and to serve as examples of how it could be done.
Okay, thank you so much. Maybe we can hear from Ms. Zines Sapula. You want to ask a question, ma'am? Go ahead.
Yeah, yes. Thank you so much, Prof, for that informative presentation. But my question is on the example that you gave on Elsevier, that the reading fee was phased out. So how do the institutions access the content that is still behind the paywall on Elsevier?
No, the idea is that within the agreement there should be totally open access also to reading in 2027. But of course, it doesn't contain all of Elsevier's publications, but within the publications included in the agreement, that there should be no, and that this has more to do with being transparent in what we pay for. So within this agreement, they say that they have costs for providing content for reading, and then we say that we don't accept that from 2027, and then they said that, okay, we will phase out that, and then the whole lump sum will include both publishing and reading, but of course not in any journal. So they are of course have still their hybrid journals behind paywalls, and that is not included, of course, then.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. I see on the chat, Dr. Duduzindeta. Of course, it does thank you for the presentation, but she's asking the question to say, do transformational agreements in Sweden cover article publications or book chapters, or books are also covered?
Yes, not the book. The question of books is, of course, it's a little bit difficult, and we are not as advanced there as when it comes to journal articles, but we are advancing step by step there as well. And of course, for example, at Stockholm University, we have the Stockholm University Press, where books are published open access, and this is included in our agreement.
Okay, one area, Prof, I'm not sure if anybody wants to ask a question, but let me just quickly ask this one. One aspect that I normally find about, alternative publishing, open access publishing models, is the issue of infrastructure and, capacity gaps that are there. People just don't know, how to go about, taking advantage of alternative models. So what has been done in terms of, Sweden, let's say at national level, regarding, ensuring the development of that kind of capacity, as well as having the right infrastructure to publish open access? And maybe you can also advise us as to what we can do. Of course, we know our context, but maybe we can learn from you.
Yeah, I think the difficult question that we faced in Sweden was that there were many initiatives, so there were lots of platforms established, and then people don't know how to orient themselves between all those platforms. And also there was in the governmental strategy, or at least as it was implemented by the National Library, there was this idea that we should actually establish a Swedish national platform. But now we have decided to rather join forces at the European level with this Open Research Europe platform. I think that is really important, that there should not be too many initiatives. We should try to work also, and I hope that also could serve as an example for other continents, that we should go together and try to provide research platforms that are open and that become attractive to scholars.
Okay. Maybe a last minute one. It says, has there been any feedback gathered from researchers about the value of publishing open access compared to just merely covering the APCs?
Sorry, I didn't get.
It's actually on the chat. It says, has there been any feedback gathered from researchers about the value of publishing open access?
Well, the National Library, they try to they are supposed to follow this development, so they are publishing reports every year, and I don't think that there is one response to this, but we have, of course, we with Elsevier we succeeded in getting an alternative where the researchers could either choose open access or not, and they didn't want that, but almost all the researchers did choose open access. So in that way, and this it was very nice, because they responded that they hadn't been awaiting that reaction from researchers. They thought that they might find it offensive to be asked about that. But so there is, I think, a growing opinion among Swedish scholars that open access brings about an added value, mostly in that actually the publications are better shared and they reach a wider audience. So that's what the reports from the National Library do show, even if it's not an overall picture. But
okay, now thank you so much, Prof. Now we have reached the end. Really, I will just hand over to my colleague, Ms. Seifert-Wirth, to actually do a vote of thanks and just close this session.
Thank you very much, Saviwe. Good afternoon. My name is Mimi Seifert-Wirth, and I'm the Director for Scholarly Communication and Marketing in the library. Technology is also not my side today, so I'm using the office of my colleague, Nokupiwa Kunene. So first of all, I would just like to thank, obviously, our speaker, Prof. Astrid Söderbergh Widding. Thank you so much for sharing your insight with us. It's always interesting for me to hear about the situation in Sweden, and then of course the importance of collaboration. Also very interesting always that your government being so engaged in the process, which makes a huge difference. Then I would also like to thank Prof. Moyo for her introduction. And then a very big thank you to our audience. At some point I checked and there were over 130 people participating. So thank you very much for each and every one of you, wherever you are in the world. Your engagement and participation means a lot to us. And then, of course, library colleagues, Ellen, of course, for Ellen Thijs, our Senior Director, for the opportunity for these webinars. Dr. Wangani for his leadership in the Research Services Division, and then, of course, his colleagues that made it possible today, Sakile Mgomezulu, I think Kirchner van Deventer is always involved, and for the IT and marketing support from other colleagues. Now, before I leave, I don't know if you want to put on the slide, which refers to this. Thank you, Sakile. So just to draw your attention to the next webinar, which will be on the 17th of September. This will be presented by Professor Rich Schneider. He is Professor and Director of the Laboratory for Developmental and Evolutionary Skeletal Biology of the Department of Orthopedic Surgery at the University of California, San Francisco. So that's quite a mouthful. He will also be discussing with relation to publishing agreements and how publishers use the license and publish agreements to try to transfer all rights held by authors and thus contravene the spirit and goals of open access. So I would like to invite all of you to put that in your calendars, because as we heard today, that only researcher behavior at the end of the day can change the system. And then, of course, the libraries believe that we can change researcher behavior by initiatives such as the hashtag Be Open Access Smart webinar series. Thank you all and have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.